You for joining us on The Skeptic Psychic, where we delve into ancient societies, ghosts, the paranormal, UFOs, all looking at it from the perspective of the true believer and from the skeptic perspective. Joining me, my partner, my co-host, my sibling, Kimber Rodriguez. Myself, I am Richard Gregg. And again, let's look into being the skeptic psychic.
Bonjour, bonjour, bonjour. And how are we all doing today? My name is Richard Gregg. And tonight, I am here with the wonderful, intelligent, highly motivated, and one of the very few people that I trust in the world. I'm talking about my dear, sweet, beautiful sister of mine, Kimber Rodriguez.
Hey, how's it going?
Pretty well. How are you doing?
I'm doing pretty good. Can you believe it's almost been 2 years that we've been doing
Almost.
this show?
Wow.
Yes, this month is will be 2 years since we've been the skeptic psychic.
Wow.
So,
Well,
so that's pretty exciting.
yes, it is. I'm just always excited to be part of this world.
Yes.
Yes, I mean it even with the doohickeys and the thingamajibs.
So, what's new on your end of the world this week?
Well, I've been busy, busy, busy.
Really?
Yes, I'm taking a vacation. Hooray!
Yay! So I hear that there's a rumor that your top secret bunker might be ready
Might
pretty
be
soon.
pretty soon.
Well, that's pretty cool. I'm sure exciting.
Yes, it is.
So
And for the life of me, I don't. Up there we are. I'm checking around and making sure that you're out there today.
yes, I saw you posted in our Facebook group about a April Fool's joke about a jackalope
Yes.
being found alive.
Yep.
Yes,
In
beware.
Tennessee,
Yes,
they're very
beware.
uncommon.
Beware of the April Fool's jokes.
Right.
Yeah.
If you read it, if you finish it, it's like you realize that they are doing an April Fool's joke.
Yeah, I meant to go on the IGN website. They usually have some really good April Fool's jokes each year on there.
Right.
So I need to go in and check that out. But thank you to everyone who's with us tonight. It's always a pleasure to have y'all on live. But if you are listening to a replay, we ask that you rate and review us. And what kind of ratings do we like?
5 stars. We like a 1, a 2, a 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 stars.
Yes, we do like
And
5
how do you like
stars.
my background, by the way?
It's very interesting. I was seeing that. It's a the swamp thing.
No, it's not the swamp thing.
It's not. Oh, it's the creature
No.
from the Black Lagoon.
Yes.
I always get those two confused. I always get mixed up on them.
Yes.
But yes,
I
we do.
figured this would be the perfect example of a Djinn. If you notice the fact they had the gold coins,
I see.
which were very tasty.
Is this a photo that you took, or?
Yes. All the photos that that are in my background are pictures I've really taken.
Interesting. Yes. If you're watching us live on on YouTube, make sure you like and subscribe and hit the notifications so you know when we go live. Also, if you're on Twitch, please make sure you subscribe. And if you are on YouTube, I'm sorry, not YouTube,
Twitch,
Facebook,
Facebook.
make sure you check out our group, The Skeptic Psychic. It's a lot of interesting people that hang out there with us. And why don't we go ahead and kick off tonight's show?
I'd be more than happy to catch up on today's show. What's it about? Well, let's just talk about, first off, the Arabic word jinn. It's been romanticized as jinn, or the angelicized as genies. They are invisible creatures in early pre-Islamic Agrabanian religion, their systems, and later in the Islamic culture and beliefs. Like humans, they are accountable for their deeds and can either be believers in Islam or unbelievers, as in the ancient religion of Kafar, depending on whether they accept God's guidance. Since jinn are neither intimately evil nor good, Islam acknowledges spirits from other religions and was able to adopt them. Jinn are not strictly Islamic concepts. They may represent several pagan beliefs integrated into Islam. To assert a strict monotheism and the Islamic concept of Tawhid, meaning God is the one and only. Islam denies all affinities between the jinn and God, thus placing the jinn parallel to humans, also subject to God's judgment in afterlife. The Quran condemns the pre Islamic Arabian practice of worshiping the jinn or seeking protection from them.
That definitely makes sense. I do know that jinn are respected and feared in the Middle East. Excuse me. So it's not something that they take lightly over there. Um, Usually they are invisible. However, they are supposed to be composed of thin and subtle bodies, and they can change their way they look at will. They do like snake forms. However, they can also be seen as scorpions, lizards, or even as humans. They may. Hello, Richard.
I'm just sending the words out to say, that I am the on here. So
Yes,
I'm sorry, I didn't mean to interrupt. I'm just
that's fine. I was just like, oh, look, somebody's talking to us. Nope, it's Richard.
it's
Yes.
me.
They may even engage in affairs with humans and produce offspring. If they are injured by someone, they usually seek revenge or possess the assailant's body. And when they do this, they refuse to leave it until forced to do so by exorcism. Jinn usually do not meddle in human affairs, but do prefer to live with their own kind in tribes similar to those of pre Islamic Arabia. Now, they do appear usually on charms and talisman and are called upon for protection or magical aid. This is often under the leadership of a king. And many people who believe in the jinn wear amulets to protect themselves against the assaults of jinn. This is usually sent out by sorcerers or witches. Now, a commonly held belief maintains that the jinn cannot hurt someone who wears something with the name of God, also known as Allah, written upon it. So, while some Muslim scholars in the past have been ambivalent attitudes towards sorcery, um, they believed that the good jinn do not require one to commit sin. Most contemporary Muslim scholars, however, do associate dealings with jinn as idolatry.
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 I
Yes, yes. Tomato,
idolatry.
tomato, tomato. You say it your way, I say it mine.
All right. The origin of the word jinn remains uncertain. Some scholars relate the Arabic term jinn to the Latin genius, a guardian spirit of people and places in Roman religion. However, there is a deviation also disputed. Another suggestion holds that jinn may be derived from the Arabic jinniyah, which meaning of guardian. Others claim a Persian origin of the word in the form of avisnik genie, a wicked female, of course, spirit. Sorry, Genie were among the various creatures and the possibility of the mythology of the people of Iran. The anglicized form, genie, is borrowed of the French genet, also from the Latin genius. It first appeared in the 18th century translation of 1001 Arabian Nights from the French, where it had been used owing to its roughly symmetry, sound, and sense, and further applies to the benevolent intermediary spirit, in contrast to the malevolent spirits called demons or heavenly angels in literature. Though not a precise fit, descriptive analogies that have been used for their being in Western thought include demon, spirit, and fae, depending on your sources. The exact origins of belief of jinn are not entirely clear. Belief in jinn are pre-Islamic Arabian religion and is certified not only by the Quran but also pre-Islamic literature in the 7th century. Some scholars of the Middle East hold that they originate as malevolent spirits residing in the desert and unclean places, who often took forms of animals. Others hold that they were originally pagan nature deities who gradually became marginalized as other deities took greater importance. Since the term jinn is not to be of Arabic but Aramic origins, jinn has been worshipped by many Arabs during the pre-Islamic period, though unlike gods, jinn were not regarded as immortals. In pre-Islamic Arabia, it was assumed they were friendly and helpful beings among the jinn. He asserts that the distinction between a god and a jinni is that the jinn are worshipped in private while the gods are worshipped in public.
Interesting.
Yes.
Now, I've never thought of jinn or genies or jinne as being worshipped. I've always just, known that a lot of people, like I said, respect and fear them. But I never would have thought that they would have actually worshipped them with that. Um, Now, although their mortality ranks them lower than the gods, it seems that the veneration of jinn had played more importance in the everyday life of pre Islamic Arabs than the gods themselves. According to common Arabian belief, soothsayers, pre Islamic philosophers, and poets were inspired by the jinn. Their culture and society were analogous to that pre Islamic Arabian culture, having tribal leaders protecting their allies and avenging murder from any member of their tribe or allies. Although the powers of jinn exceed those of humans, it is conceivable that a man could kill a genie in a single combat. Jinn were thought to shift into different shapes, but were feared, especially in their invisible form. Since then, they could attack without being seen. Jinn were also feared because they had been seen through, they had been thought to be responsible for various diseases and mental illness. Of course, we always want to blame something outside of us on mental illness,
Mm-hmm.
which, again, like I mentioned on last week's episode, sometimes I do believe that some things we've seen that science claims is mental illness, I don't always agree with, but I digress. I lost my train of thought, sorry.
I don't know.
um, Julius Wellenhausen observed that such spirits were thought to inhabit desolate, dingy, and dark places, and that they were feared. One had to protect themselves from them, but they were not the object of a true cult. Al Jahiz credits the pre-Islamic Arabs with believing that the society of jinn constitutes several tribes and groups, and sometimes natural events were attributed to them, such as storms. So you got a big windstorm kicking up, and it's like, oh, the jinn, they are warning us not to go further. We must get back, or the jinn will attack. However, they also thought that the jinn could protect, marry, kidnap, possess, and kill people. Despite that, they were often feared or they inspired awe.
Oh,
No, it's more like, what is it?
ah,
Like, oh, I think might be.
whoa,
Ooh, ah,
yay!
oh,
Popping fresh dough.
yes. Okay. This, the
Have
jinn.
romantic.
Oh, sorry, go ahead.
No, I'm just catching where you're at.
Yes. The jinn were also pictured to have romantic feelings for humans. According to the famous pre-Islamic story, the Genie Mansur, fell in love with a human woman called Haba, and he taught her the arts of healing through this love.
Now, they are believed to live in societies resembling those of humans, practicing their religions, including Islam, Christianity, and Judaism, having emotions, needing to eat and drink and procreate and raise families. Muslim jinns are usually thought to be benign. Christian and Jewish jinn indifferent unless angered, and pagan jinn evil. Other common characteristics include fear of iron or wolves, generally appearing in desolate or abandoned places and being stronger and faster than humans. Night is considered to be a particularly dangerous time because the jinn would then leave their hiding places. Since jinn share the earth with humans, but Muslims often conscious not accidentally hurt or innocent jinn. Jinn are also often believed to be able to take over a human body. Although there is a strong belief among many Muslims, some authors argue that since the Quran doesn't explicitly attribute possession to the jinn, it derives from pre Islamic beliefs. Morocco, especially, has many possession traditions, including exorcism rituals. However, jinn cannot
Sorry.
jinn cannot enter a person's bodies whenever the jinn wants. Rather, the victim must be in a predisposed or predisposition for for possessions, and that means that they've got to be open and you know what it means to be open-minded. They can't go up to you and go, "I'm going to jump inside you right now." You got to be, so uh, drunk, stupid, or
Drugged.
drugged in order for a jinn to come in to possess you. Now, Javanese Muslims hold similar belief about the jinn as inhabiting lonely and haunted places, and the ability to possess or scare people who trample their homes or accidentally kill a related jinn. In some cases, jinn may even take revenge by inflicting physical damage. Muslims, in order to avoid hurting the jinn by uttering a dist permission before sprinkling hot water so the jinn might leave the place. Some jinn guard graves and cause illness to people who intend to disturb the graves. Benevolent jinns are called Jinn Islam, and they are pilot, pious, and faithful. The others are called Jinn Kafar. While good jinn might even help a Muslim to do hard work or produce a magical act, evil jinn follow the influence of the devils.
Um, I know that I've heard stories in Iraq about haunted bunkers
Hmm.
that are thought to inhabit jinn. Um, and then I also remember seeing, I don't know if you remember that show that used to be on, Paranormal Caught on Camera.
Hmm.
There was an episode of a guy, he was doing like Zoom or Skype or something like that with his family back home. And all of a sudden, uh, I guess like lockers or whatever that were behind him just started
Hmm.
shaking violently. And his internet started going crazy. And the base that he was in, or whatever, where he was located in, his bunker, I guess you could, or his, wherever he stayed and lived,
Hmm.
was supposedly haunted by a jinn as well. So that was pretty interesting that that was kind of caught on camera to see that. Now, in Arthas, also known as Bethlehem, benevolent jinn might support humans and teach them moral lessons. The evil jinn frequently ascend to the surface, causing sickness to children, snatching food, and taking revenge where humans mistreat them. Jinn live either on earth or under the surface, rather than in the air, and may possess people who have insulted them. For example, if their children are trodden upon or hot water is thrown on them, they can scare or devour a human being, if they so desire. Therefore, most people try to avoid contacting the jinn or offering gifts when it is believed the jinn are preying upon them. So I guess they don't necessarily live in the lamps as we see in the movies.
Interesting to note that is one of the myths about and legends about when it comes to the jinn. It's usually they've been in prison for something they did.
Interesting. Yes, I've always heard stories of them running free, not being locked away in the lamp as we tend to hear.
Hmm.
Um, Now, according to a survey undertaken by the Pew Research Center in 2012, at least 86% of Muslims in Morocco, 84% in Bangladesh, and 63% in Turkey, 55% in Iraq, and 53% in Indonesia, followed by 47% in Thailand and 15% elsewhere in Central Asia, all affirm a belief in the existence of the jinn. The low rate in Central Asia might be influenced by Soviet religion oppression. 36% of Muslims in Bosnia and Herzegovina believe in jinn, which is higher than the European average of only 30%. However, only 21% believe in sorcery. Hey, Phoebe, so glad you could join us. I hope you enjoy the talk tonight. As I was saying, only 21% of the Europeans believe in sorcery, and only 13% wear talisman to protect against the jinn. 12% of these people actually support offerings and appeal given to the jinn. Um, Going back to what you were saying about the whole genie and the
The
lamp,
lamp.
uh, I know that they say that, be careful what you wish for with those genies, because you have to be very specific, because they can twist your wish into something for their own humor, you know, to either antagonize or torment you.
Hmm.
But continue on.
Continuing on, most of the Islamic majority countries in West Africa have a long tradition of Jinn stories and populations that mostly believe in their existence, although there are some Islamic movements in the area that reject their resistance. Sleep paralysis is understood as a Jinn attack by many sleep paralysis sufferers in Egypt, as discovered by a Cambridge, Cambridge
Cambridge, tomato, tomato.
neuroscientist study Jahal and Hilton in 2013. This study found that 48% of those who experienced sleep paralysis in Egypt believe it was an assault by the jinn. Now, somebody who's coming from the sleep paralysis and Onag's uh,
Old tag
attack,
syndrome.
yes, that is one of the most scariest things you can actually experience because you're basically you're you feel like you're awake, but you're still in the dreamland. I mean, almost of all of these sleep paralysis sufferers, maybe about 90%, recite verses from the Quran. Also, you can recite the Bible, John 3:16, the Lord's Prayer, John 3:17, Psalm 23, during the to prevent future jinn attacks. In addition, some, only 9%, would increase their daily Islamic prayers to get rid of the assaults by jinn. Sleep paralysis is generally associated with great fear in Egypt, especially if believed to be supernatural in origin.
Interesting. I was actually going to ask your thoughts on that, knowing that you do suffer from sleep paralysis. So it's interesting that you went ahead and mentioned that. That is something that I would like to do an episode on in the future,
Hmm.
because I know that they say it's psychosomatic, but I've known people and I've heard stories about people waking up not only from the sleep paralysis, but with markings or bruises that are not possible to do to themselves. I know our mom had an instance with that here at our house, that I can talk about sometime. But those kind of stories lead me to believe that this isn't psychosomatic all the time. Because if it's all psychosomatic, how are you getting damaged? But I would love to do an episode on that in the future. If people are interested, let us know in the comments. Um, but another thought thing that was supposedly to be people thought were associated or to be an attack of the jinn was an epileptic seizure. Also, people believe that this is, when you're being possessed by the jinn, is having this seizure. And in order to prevent this, again, like you said, cite the name of God and use iron blades to draw protection circles around the victim. Telling jinn stories and recounting alleged encounters with them are a common pastime in parts of the Muslim world, similar to telling ghost stories in Western culture. And until a couple of decades ago, when these stories fell out of fashion, thanks to the increasing penetration of digital entertainment and modern recording equipment, they began to undermine the credibility of these stories. But again, I've seen some that were actually caught on tape that, yeah, couldn't be discredited. Phoebe says that she called on Jesus to stop sleep paralysis. I felt like I was suffocating, and they don't want to sleep on their back because of this. Don't want to experience that again. I
No,
could definitely understand how frightful that could be. I have sleep apnea, and I kind of get that way if I sleep on my back myself. Um, Also, jinn are further known as gifted shapeshifters, and they often assume the form of animals. In Islamic culture, many narratives concern a serpent who is actually a genie. Other animals regarded as forms of the jinn could include scorpions and lizards. Both scorpions and serpents have been venerated in the ancient Near East. Some sources even speak of a killed jinn leaving behind a carcass similar to either a serpent or a scorpion. When they shift into human form, however, They are said to stay partly animal and not fully human. Individual jinn are thus often depicted as monstrous creatures with body parts from different animals or humans with animal traits. So, my question is the whole Illuminati thing and the lizard people. Are these jinn or are they jinn hybrids?
I don't think so.
Come on,
I really
they've got the lizard characteristics. They're supposed to be all powerful. They've got to be jinn.
no, they're not Jinn because basically Jinn are invisible, and the only reason why they pop up is that sort of thing. While the lizard people, according to legend, are all around us and are not afraid to be around us. While the Jinn want to be solitary, the lizard people want to be our masters.
That
Hallelujah!
that is true. They do want to take over.
And pass the ammo, Jake.
So, why don't you tell us some of the? Why don't you kick off some of the best stories of the Arabian Nights, like Arabian Days? So why
Uh,
don't you take over and tell us some stories from there?
all right. The Arabian Nights were also added by succeeding generations. Indeed, three of the most famous stories from the 1001 Nights didn't become part of the Arabian Nights canon until the early 18th century, as we explore below. Clearly, this collection of tales is worth a closer look. Whether it's flying carpets, gaseous bridegrooms, or genies granting wishes, there is much to enchant, delight, and amuse in the Arabian Nights. Here are 10 of the best stories.
Um, Interesting. I was recently watching a podcast called Dark History with Bailey Sarian. I don't know if you've heard of
Hmm.
her,
Yes.
but she does really interesting things about history that we've never seen before. And she decided to go into some of the fairy tales that we grew up in.
Hmm.
And one of the things that she mentioned was that the original Arabian Nights was actually written in China. I don't know if you've heard that or if that's true, but
Yes.
I
If
found
you
that very
ever
interesting.
if you ever think break down Aladdin's name, because he was supposedly from the Orient, his name is probably a lad named Din,
That makes sense.
and Din is closer to an Oriental name than Aladdin.
That's interesting. So it was originally started by the Chinese and then taken over in the Middle East. That's very interesting. So,
Hmm.
what's the first story of our top 10?
One of my favorites, Sinbad and the Seven Voyages. This basically is a story about a sailor over a course of 7 voyages throughout the seas of East Africa and Southern Asia. The intrepid mariner has fantastic adventures in magical realms, encountering monsters and various supernatural and magical feats, including horses that live underwater and an island that turns out to be a fast sleeping whale. Sinbad's wonderful stories did not become part of the Arabian Nights until the 18th century, making them a relatively late addition. In some ways, they might be regarded as the Middle Eastern version of Homer's classic The Odyssey, in their focus on the adventures of the titular character and his negotiations through the sea, encountering various fantastical places and beings.
Interesting. I know you've always enjoyed that story.
Yes. In fact, a writer, one of my favorite writers, did a farcical version of the Arabian Nights with the 3 books is The Other Sinbad, uh, uh, all I can remember is the third, the first and third book. The third book being the last tale, the Shirazade. Let
Hmm.
me get that information for you.
Okay. While you're looking that up, number two, we have The Three Apples, which is one of the earliest detective stories. A body of a woman turns up in a wooden chest, and the Sultan's vizier is charged with solving the crime in 3 days, or he himself will be executed. The vizier fails to work out who done it and makes little attempt to crack the case. Hence the story's status as an anti-detective story. But the hapless vizier is saved from death when the real murderer shows up at the last minute and confesses to his crimes. So yeah, not very bright of the vizier to think he was above solving this murder when it almost was his own. Then we
Yeah,
have Alibaba and them 40 thieves. Sherazade had a thousand tales. Sorry about Alibaba and his 40 thieves.
right. I got the names of all three books now and the
Go ahead.
author's name.
Go for it.
All right. The name author is Craig Shaw Gardner. The three books in the trilogy are The Other Sinbad, A Bad Day for Alibaba, and The Last Arabian Night.
Interesting. I'll have to check that out.
They
Sounds
are very.
interesting.
If you're a big fan uh, of the Arabian Nights or 1001 Nights, these three books are just pinpoint, very hilariously farce when it comes to that.
Interesting. Okay, back to Alibaba and his 40 thieves. This is after the tale of Aladdin and the magic lamp. And it is best known of the Arabian Nights stories. The words open sesame are famous even to people who have never read the story of this crafty thief and his adventures. But there are a number of curious details about the story which are lesser known. So that's a good one that I to read. Every time I think of Open Sesame, though, I think of that cartoon, the Looney Tunes cartoon,
Hmm.
where the guy's like trying to open up the thing and he can't remember the right words, and he's like, "Open sarsaparilla." No, no, no. So yeah, that's
Yes.
what I always think of.
There's also talk of the fact that sesame may not be the actual word that opens the may sound similar to it.
Really?
Yes, sesame. There's different possible pronunciations. In fact, in the Arabic, uh, the word sesame is another word. So
So I just remember him saying on the cartoon, "Open sarsaparilla, open Saskatchewan," and then Daffy Duck and "It's mine, it's mine, it's all mine."
I'm filthy luckered, and people look at me
Yes,
when I say that, like, what does that mean? Yes.
yes. So what's next on the list?
Uh, we're gonna have to bring up Abu Hassan and the fart.
Is that a typo?
No, that's not a typo.
Tell us about this guy and his passing of gas.
It is one of the lesser known, and I've heard favorites of some people who do like the Arabian Nights. It shows how funny some of the Arabian entertainments, as they were often known, can be. It centers on a man who flees his country following an embarrassment of having passed gas at his own wedding.
Oh my goodness, I can just imagine the priestess sitting there saying, "Do you take this woman to be your lawfully wedded wife?" And before he can finish the sentence, you just hear this loud passing of gas throughout the church.
Now, when he returns 10 years later, he discovers that his deed has become so famous that has been used as part of the calendar as a way of dating other events. When he overhears the young girl asks, "Mommy, when was I born?" The mother answers, "My daughter, you were born on the very night when Abu Hassan fought it." Abu is overjoyed, and that something that he has done will be remembered and live on forever. Immortality of a kind, we suppose.
Oh my gosh, that is too crazy. I can just
Hmm.
picture that. What about the poor bride, though? I mean, he
Uh,
went out on their wedding.
yes,
Makes you wonder if she ever forgave him.
possibly. King Shayar and his brother. This is often included in selections of the Arabian Nights because it explains how Sherazade comes to tell the stories in the collection, although it's not the most pleasant of stories. Two brothers, Shayar and Shah Zaman, are both kings. They both have unfaithful wives, whom they would kill rather than answer ceremony for their adultery. They encounter an Ifrit, an evil spirit or monster, and discover that the Ifrit keeps a woman in his trees. Although the Ifrit believes the woman to be pure, she in fact secretly had many partners and adds both brothers to her conquest. Also noted that the reason why Shahrazad comes to tell the tales is she is saving her own neck
Hmm.
from Shalaharan.
If I remember correctly, as long as she keeps telling stories, he'll keep her alive.
Yes,
Yes. I hear your kitties back
yes, I
there.
know.
They want to be part of the show as
Probably.
well. Now we have the merchant and the genie. Um, if the above story acts as a framing device for the 1001 Nights, the story of the merchant and genie is one of Shahrazadi's first to tell. A merchant accidentally angers a genie or a Genie, however you want to say it. Some say Jinn, some say Genie, some say Genie. Um, but when this merchant angers them, they make it their decision to kill the hapless trader. However, he grants the merchant a year to settle his affairs before returning to the fate. When a year has passed, the day of reckoning arrives, and three sheiks appear, and each tell a story trying to convince the genie to spare the merchant's life. Um, so this really is about three or even four stories in one. We also have the thief of Alexandria and the chief of police.
Flees the country.
Flees the country. Oh, they're talking about the guy who farted.
Yes.
He fled the country. The Thief of Alexandria and the Chief of Police is a very brief story from the collection. Indeed, it usually only runs to a few pages in most translations. Husameddin is the chief of police in the Egyptian city of Alexandria. And one night, a soldier comes to him, telling him that his purse of monies was stolen. Husameddin arrests everyone who was staying in the vicinity. And when the real thief turns up and freely confesses that he did it, there is a twist that comes at the end of this short tale. But we're not going to tell you what that twist is because that would destroy the fun.
You could read
So,
about it. Read about it.
yeah, so we recommend reading The Thief of Alexandria to find out that little twist at the end.
Now, we actually do get to one of my favorites, The Ebony Horse. As well contains stories which are precursors to the modern detective fiction, as in The Three Apples. This Arabian Night also contains what might be considered a proto science fiction tale. The ebony horse in the story is a flying mechanical horse, which is controlled by using keys. It can fly into space and cover the distance of 1 year in a single day. The protagonist of the stories, aside from the horse, of course, and there was no other horse, of course, unless, of course, you mean the horse that's name is Mr. Ed. Never mind.
No, his name's not Ed.
It's Mr. Ed.
Not in this story.
Well, of course. The Prince of Persia, Qanmir al-Kamal, the inventor of this fabulous mechanical horse, shows up in the city of Shazad, and the king buys a horse for his son. The prince, of course, then rides the flying horse off on numerous adventures and meets in love with a Bengali princess and incurs the wrath of the inventor of the horse. On another tale, known as The Fisherman and the Genie, the protagonist encounters a vengeful genie or Genie rather than a helper. We find the Aladdin story. Indeed, with the tale of the merchant and the genie above, the spirit in this story sentenced the poor fisherman, who's already down on his luck, to death. However, the quick thinking fisherman, power to the common man, managed to outwit the supernatural nemesis.
And finally, in the Tale of 1001 Nights, we come along to the most famous of all, Aladdin and his magic lamp.
Arabian nights, like Arabian days, are hotter than hot. My gosh, my God, it's not out of the way.
Now, this story is undoubtedly the most famous. And yet, like the story of Ali Baba and the adventures of Sinbad, it was only added relatively recently in the early 18th century, thanks to Antoine Galland. Aladdin, a young boy living with his mother in poverty in, as we mentioned earlier, China. One day, he comes into possession of a magic lamp which contains a genie capable of granting him wishes. The story which ensues has everything from an evil magician and a beautiful princess, who, by the way, is not named Jasmine. Um, Also, there are plenty of obstacles placed in our plucky hero's way as he endeavors to win the hand of the Sultan's daughter. What endears us to Aladdin is perhaps precisely his rough edges, the diamond in the rough.
Possibly.
Yes, the fact that he is poor but somehow wayward rather than poor and innocent. This makes him more relatable and realistic to people.
Now, interesting to note, in the Aladdin stories, the what he does before he meets the Sultan's daughter is every day he wishes for food for his mother and himself. And then he turns around and he sells those plates that the genie, brings the food out to him in to keep the hounds at bay from the tax collector, that sort of thing. He only wishes to marry the princess when he catches a glimpse of her riding through town. And it's just basically he catches her, you know, back then explaining men do not supposed to see women in public, even when they were in their little chariots, that sort of thing. They were hidden behind a curtain. So Aladdin got a quick peek, basically, and so that began his journey of being. That also brought him back to the evil wizard, because here this guy, this princely guy, shows up as the doing all these magical, wonderful things. So just being realistic.
Interesting. I got a quick joke to tell before we continue on.
Okay.
Guy's sitting on a deserted island. And, he's kind of just chilling out. Doesn't really want to make an effort to get any kind of fortress or anything. Just kind of sitting there watching the waves as they come in and out. And he sees a bottle kind of come up on the shoreline, and it's being pushed in by the waves, and he's just watching it sitting there as it comes in and out with the current. Finally, the waves push it up far enough that his foot brushes against it, and of course the genie pops out. And the genie's like, thank you for releasing me. I shall grant you 3 wishes in return. And the guy's like, okay, I want a horse. And the guy's like, a horse? Yes, I want a horse. Perplexed, the genie's like, okay, well, there you go. Poof, a horse. What would you like next? He's like, I want 2 strong men. He's like, 2 strong men? I mean, you could have all the riches in the world. You could, you know, have beautiful women. You can have, anything your heart's desires, wealth, fame, fortune. I just want 2 men. Again, perplexed, the genie says, okay, and poof, there's 2 men. He's like, okay, you have one final wish. What would you like? The guy thinks about it and he's like, I want a squirrel. The genie's like, a squirrel? Really? Come on. The guy's like, I want a squirrel. So, poof, there's a little squirrel there. Genie finally asks, now, why such odd and weird requests when you can have anything, all your heart's desires? He's like, well, I want the horse so I can ride away from this area, maybe find more on the island. I want the 2 men to pick me up and put me on the horse. The genie's like, okay, and what about the squirrel? He's like, well, I want the squirrel to go so that the horse will take off. Talk about laziness.
Yes.
So, on that note, what about genies in the media?
Well, it's my turn to try entice you with a genie joke real quick.
Go for it.
All right. Uh, 3 men are on an island somewhere in the Arabian Ocean. When up pops up into the water a bottle, and of course they unpop the cork, and the genie pops out and says, I can give you guys 3 wishes for thanking me. Only 1 wish per person. So the first one says, well, I wish I was on the ski slopes of the river of the Swiss Alps. Boom, he's gone. Second one says, I wish I was in New Orleans, listen to jazz music. Poof, he's gone. Third one says, I don't know. I wish my 2 friends were here to give me.
Okay.
You don't get it?
The 2 friends were poofed back?
Yes?
Okay. Interesting.
Yep. So they went. They didn't get too far.
Continue on.
Continuing on. Now we have a few media references to the genie legend, including one of the thought basically done by the Twilight Zone, which was showed on October 7th, 1960. It's called The Man in a Bottle. Author and Edna Cassell run a small antique shop, but business is not good. And while they're having trouble paying the bills, despite that, the good-hearted author buys an old wine bottle from the desperate Mrs. Gumley for $1. When he knocks the bottle open, the genie appears. offering them four, one, two, three, four wishes, which makes them their wishes don't lead up to the outcomes they have already hoped for, and certainly don't lead to happiness. That means that they have entered the Twilight Zone. Now, we also go to the Andy Griffin Show. Helen is incensed when rumors are spread around town that she and Andy are engaged. She's sure Andy has something to do with it, but with all them news to him as well. It seems Gooba and Barney went to an auction where Deputy bought an old jank game made up an oil lamp and a tarot like cards. As a result, in a strange series of consequences, Barney comes to believe he can make your wishes come true. He gives Andy I'm sorry, not Andy, Opie, three wishes. His first is to have a pocket knife, and sure enough, Andy soon gives him one. His second, that he gets a B in arithmetic, and sure enough, he gets it. When Barney thinks that the third wish is for Andy and Helen to get married, it's a foregone conclusion that as far as anyone is concerned, only thing is, Opie don't wish for for them to be married, but something else. Opie wanted Miss Crump, his teacher, to be his teacher in the sixth grade. And like the school has now informed Miss Crump that day that she will be transferred to the being in the sixth grade.
Okay, next we have Disney's Aladdin. Now, Disney, of course, is a fun-filled story with Robin Williams playing the remarkable Genie of the lamp, right here, direct from the lamp. And we all enjoyed his sincerity and jokes as he helped Aladdin win the heart of Jasmine and persuaded him to be authentic and be yourself with Jasmine. And we also have the live action version of this, played by Will Smith, who I must say I was very impressed with because he put his own spin on the Genie and did such a great job as well. One of my favorite shows was also I Dream of Genie, starring Barbara Eden. And yes, her gratitude and love for Major Anthony Nelson, played by Larry Hagman, along with her constant use of magic, brought hilarity throughout the show. The more Major Nelson would ask her not to use it, the more she would find reasons to do so. With the cross of her arms and the bob of her head, she would bring about some laughs and consequences of such.
Kazan! Many people have confused this movie with a mythical one called Shazam with Sinbad. This movie, however, is the real deal. And I will also say that Shazam was a real movie as well. I've seen highlights from it.
Which is interesting because Sinbad says he's never done it.
Yeah. Now, it's starring not Sinbad, the comedian, but the basketball legend Shaquille O'Neal. That
Very
little
nice
Shaq
guy.
attack. Yes.
Very nice
Actually,
guy. I've actually
he,
talked to him on the phone when I worked at DirecTV.
yes. And not only that, he also went to high school in San Antonio.
No,
Ooh.
he's from Florida.
No, he went to high school in San Antonio.
Are you sure? I've heard different stories. Let me see. I'm gonna look this up while you continue on telling us about Kazam.
Who ends up becoming a father figure to a troubled boy when he frees the genie from his lamp by putting a smile on his face with his quick wit and rhyming spells of magic. Yes, he went 1 year to high school in San Antonio.
I'm looking that up. What's your next movie?
The Brass Bottle. It stars Burl Ives. Remember the man who, the snowman in Rudolph? Yeah, he actually played Farouche, a friendly and joyful genie who, after being trapped in a bottle for 2,000 years, is so grateful to be free and a bit lost in the new world. He goes bestowing magical gifts on his new master to show his appreciation in hilarious ways. There's also the Thief of Baghdad, with a young Sabu uh, helps out the Sultan Armand, who is trying to save his love from the cunning Vizier Jafar. He's a vizier now.
Yeah, he
That
was a
kind of names a
vizier.
bell, doesn't it?
Yeah,
However, in the second act, the thief, played by Sabu, is now playing Abu. Hmm, fascinating. He's stranded on a desert island when he finds a lamp. After rubbing it, he is met by a powerful and large, not so nice Djinn, who threatens to crush the thief under his great foot. Even though the Djinn is only in the film for a short time, hilariously, his performance is quite remembrance as he grants the wishes for the thief Abu, and he does it in a way that doesn't really help, but he does grant the wishes.
okay, I looked it up, and his senior year, Shaq did go to school at in San Antonio. So you win that round.
Thank you. I a couple of, about like 30 years ago, he went to his high school reunion there, and everybody's like, Shaq's actually going to some Podoke High School in San Antonio. He's like, well, this is where I made the best of friends here, you know.
Yeah, I when I worked at DirecTV, he called in because he was having some issues with his service, and he was a really nice, quiet spoken man. I was really impressed. Would love to meet him in person someday.
Yes.
Um, Next, we go to Wishmaster, one of my favorite 90s horror movies, written by my favorite horror writer for movies, the infamous Wes Craven. And this movie makes us remember the old phrase, be careful what you wish for. After creating chaos and mayhem in the form of mass murder in the 12th century of Persia, this evil Djinn is trapped in a crystal for centuries. Then, in modern times, he is released by a drunk construction worker when a statue is being moved by crane and crashes to the ground, revealing the said opal. More sinister than his predecessors, his goal is to return to his sadistic ways of murder and torture before he is returned to the crystal with one final, carefully thought out wish. This movie is followed by several not so great sequels that were actually direct to video. I think I saw the second one and it was nowhere near as good, so I didn't watch any others. Um, but yeah, that's one that, shows that how you might make a simple wish and how he will twist it into something totally different.
Hmm.
We also have another one that I think you enjoyed a lot, which was The Seventh Voyage of Sinbad.
Oh, I love every Sinbad movie I've seen, except for the BBC production of it.
Never saw that one. In this movie, the genie it differs from others as he appears to be just a child, longing to be freed from his lamp and sail the world like his idol and the star of the show, Sinbad. However, don't let his looks fool you. His powers at a young age are just as mighty as the many other genies on this list. We also have 3,000 Years of Longing.
Which is a newer version.
Yes, this is the tale of a Jinn, like so many others, that wants to be free of his captive bottle. However, unlike many of the others, he is faulted by many emotions, as we humans feel day to day. Hoping his new master will pity him and release him from his enslavement, He engages her in three exciting tales. Some other ones that I forgot to put on the list would be, uh, do you remember Tales from the Crypt?
Mm-hmm.
There is a story from Tales from the Crypt of a Djinn who grants three wishes. Again, be careful what you wish for because those wishes aren't always what they appear to be. And there were two episodes of the show, the original Charmed. One with French Stewart, who played the genie, and he promises the source that he can destroy the charmed witches while he secretly wants to be freed. And then also, there's one where a demon is trapped in a bottle, and when she gets released, Phoebe takes her place as the genie in the bottle. So, those are just some interesting shows and movies that you might want to catch and check out.
Supernatural.
There was a supernatural about genies?
Yes, there was.
Oh, I haven't seen all the supernatural episodes. What was that one about?
Uh, the elder brother finds a lamp and releases the genie,
Uh,
and as he's getting his wishes granted, you're shown exactly what's happening to him outside of his wishes. I'm just gonna leave it at that.
so, with that, we
There
ask.
was also, I'm
I'm
sorry,
sorry, go ahead. Go ahead.
there was also a Hanna-Barbera show from 1969 to 1970 about a genie and two kids going on different adventures in the ancient Arabia.
Interesting. I've never heard of that one.
Yes, and there was, I believe it was called Arabian Nights. And last but not least, they we also have to talk about the Hanna-Barbera cartoon, Genie. Again, it is about Genie who is training a young uh, genie by the name of Abu. Again, that name pops up, and he was always a klutz with doing yapple dapple. He was later to be seen on the Laugh Olympics as part of the Scooby Doobies.
I think I remember him on the Laugh Olympics.
So, yes, there is other shows with genies in them. Again, if anyone can actually give us a few more examples of genies, uh, little Riku and I, who is behind me, would love to hear the tales.
Yes. With that, we ask, what are your thoughts on Jinn and genies?
I
Do you
mean, I've
think?
actually heard. Well, I'm sorry, I get ahead of myself because I've heard other tales and mythos about the Jinn as well. So
Yes. Do you think they are evil or just temperamental? You can let us know in the comments. Also, again, make sure you click the notifications to find out when we are posting new videos and when we're
one
live.
more example. The reboot of Clash of the Titans, they run into the Jinn out there in the desert.
I've never seen that one. If
They
you are
ride. They get to ride the scorpions.
interesting.
Yes.
Okay, if you are listening to a replay on your favorite podcast, again, we ask that you please rate and review us. And what kind of reviewings do we like?
1, 2, 2 stars. 1, 2, 3 stars. 1, 2, 3, 4 stars. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. 5 stars is what we seek.
Yes, we do like 5 stars, but we'll take whatever you want to give us. Also, please leave a review. We do read reviews on air. Next week, we will be skipping Sunday due to Easter, but we will be back that Monday at 8:30 p.m. Central Time, 9:30 Eastern, 7:30 Mountain, and 6:30 Pacific. And on that episode, we will be discussing Easter and other holidays this time of year around the world. If you have any questions or stories you would like to share, you can always email us at info@skepticpsychic.com and also join our Facebook group, Skeptic Psychic. where you can hang out with like minded great people and share memes, ask questions, etc. Anything else you'd like to add before we close out this week?
Yes, I would like to reiterate the episode with Bugs Bunny and Daffy Duck with the genie at the. You only get to see the genie at the end of the episode, and Daffy Duck basically tries to shove him back into the lamp, which of course the genie does take care of things in the proper,
I,
perspective.
I remember him getting shrunk down and wrapping himself around a pearl as
Mhm.
the clam closes down upon him,
Yes,
saying, "It's mine! It's mine! It's
yes,
all mine!"
I'm filthy rich.
Yes.
I'm retirable.
Again, thank you so much, everybody, for joining us. We always love having you in our live streams. Make sure you join us next Monday. And until then, sweet dreams, everyone.
And unpleasant nightmares. Good night.
Good night, everyone.